obviously important to keep the team together and see that the goal and what we're working towards too, because there are long nights, everyone is tired, maybe the race driver crashed the car, but there's another race the next day, so you need to put the car back together, and you're kind of disheartened, so you need to have a strong community. Keeping that team together, that's valuable as well.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Engineering Buzzcast. My name is Jacob Primus and I'm joined here today with my good mate and co-host Daniel Hardy. Now our guest today is perfect for all you rev heads out there or anybody who's wanting to learn more about the automotive industry, as here in the studio today we have Romy Mayer, who's now currently working as a race engineer for 888 Race Engineering. Romy has over 10 years experience in this field with a primary focus on trackside data, performance, and race engineering. Originating from Germany, the home of companies such as Mercedes, Porsche and BMW, there she did her thesis with Mercedes Benz, then moving on to her first ever racing series, the DTM series. She kept the ball rolling, or should I say wheels rolling, in her move to Australia, where in the first year she secured second place for her team in the Dunlop Super 2 Championship, as well as 5 podiums and 1 win in the competitive GT Asia World Challenge. Parallel to her work, she works for the electric vehicle startup Whirl, where she conducts regular analysis on the electric vehicle market for Australia. And just when you thought you couldn't have any more eggs in one basket, she's also the co-founder of the Future Females Gold Coast chapter. So without further ado, Romy, welcome to the show.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
So Romy, give us a quick rundown of the work you do on a weekly basis as a race engineer at 888, and what are some noticeable projects and stuff you've been working on recently?
Yeah, so to be honest, it's not the work as a race team or as a race engineer, it's not daily the same work. So it's always very different. There's no day the same than the other. At the moment, we're just at the start of the race season, so it's usually very busy, and we have a lot of work for pre-season, which we always complete before the first race or the first couple races coming along, which means building the race cars and get them ready for the first race, as well as making sure all the parts are correctly on the car, as well as the sensor itself, the electronic system works, which is one big part of my job, is just making sure all the sensors on the race car work in electronic systems, as well as the little computers in the car, they're all up to date.
Okay, so how do you do that? Do you just plug a laptop straight into a car essentially?
Correct. That's how it is when we have established a car and it's all up to spec. We are confident with all the electronics. So then we can plug into the car with a laptop and a cable, and we can access all the computers. Basically, what you would do when you plug in a hard drive into your laptop, and then you can see what's on the hard drive. So I can see what's on the car, but it has obviously its little brains everywhere in the car itself. So then we control these little computers in the car, we program them, we decide which sensors on the car we want to monitor. We have actually on the racetrack live telemetry, which means we can live see from the paddock what's the car doing on the track, what's the temperature of the engine, what's the tire pressure doing, but also very important for us is how the vehicle is behaving on the track, like what's the speed, but what's the ride height, what's the springs doing. So all these little sensors come into the computers, which then get conducted to math, and then math we're taking out and analyzing.
Right.
That's basically not further down the track, but it's like that's what we do on the racetrack, or like in an important. But obviously it leads up to that with a lot of work around it to make sure it's going all well.
Okay, so does that, like you said that it converts into math, does that math then go into like a graphical user interface sort of thing on the screen to analyze it better? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so these math channels, we log them or we have them sent across telemetry, and we can see them running along the screens and see on which part of the track the car is doing what.
Okay.
So, and we can obviously make our own little graphs, our own little displays, dashboard, alarms, if any parameter goes out of the range or out of the limits. And that would all have our dashboard, and we monitor. I think I'm not sure how many channels we are actually. It's actually limited by the category how much we can send across live.
Okay.
Because they want everyone have the same things to look at, and not having some teams which might have more resources and engineers have an advantage because they can just monitor more and create more channels. So it's, I think, around maybe 100 channels which we can see live. But then after the race car come actually back in the garage, we can access much more of the data, and back at the office or at the workshop, we can analyze much more as well.
That's awesome. So that's what I was going to ask as well. So it's not just the engineers analyzing that information, or do the engineers analyze it and then process it and send it to other people, or what goes on there?
Yeah. So it's basically there are a couple engineers which is at the moment still also part of my job, who are the data and performance engineers. So they're responsible first that all the electronics work, that the sensors are working, that the correct sensors are in the race car fitted, but then also they would analyze the data from the race cars. Like you look at what's the difference between the two cars. Why was that car had a lower ride height than the other car? Why were the tire pressure higher? And then we feed this information to the race engineers. And the race engineers, I would call them, they're like the chief engineer of one specific race car. He is responsible, or he makes in the end the decision which setting he wants to have on the race car, and also communicates to the race driver and the mechanics, and obviously gives the jobs to the mechanics and say, because we think that spring is better than the other spring, please put that in. So that's kind of how it then this gets distributed. But also, for example, if you would see there is something wrong with the engine, then we would talk to the engine engineer and tell them, we saw that's happening. Can you have a look when the race car is back at the workshop and at the engine if it's all correct. So there's a couple of engineers who collect the data, analyze them, and then the information gets distributed to other engineers, but as well as to the mechanics. And for example, mechanic in sub-assembly who would then service the gearbox, they need to know what mileage the gearbox had on this specific race event, or what kind of temperature it saw, the oil needs to be changed, and so on. Yeah,
okay. So I was going to ask, because on that, how interdisciplinary is your role? Like in the team, how many engineers? Like you got your mechanicals, electricals, and what other sort of engineers are out there on that team?
Yeah, in motorsport in general, depends a lot on which race category you're working in, as well as which team you are both. So if you work in Formula One, these teams have 400 engineers working, and obviously they are very specific in their field. There's a gearbox engineer, there's an engine engineer. It's like every little field divided into a group of engineers. While when you would come to or here in Australia, even the supercars, which are the most popular and biggest race series here, there are some teams they only have a couple engineers, maybe 2 engineers, 3 mechanics, a team manager, and that's it. So obviously then these engineers, they take on multiple roles. So that the race engineer might also do the data analysis. So it also depends where you're at, not only the category, but also within a category, which team you are in the ones who have a lot of a bit bigger budget, or one which is just starting out, or it's just like a small hobby team,
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah. So how much pressure is there on the engineers? Because obviously you just said that there's only 3 engineers per some of the teams. Obviously they've got to know a lot of information. Is there a lot of pressure on those engineers?
Yeah. There's in general a lot of pressure in motorsport, I think. Especially the race categories which are on TV, always in the public eye, and that makes it actually also quite interesting, that's for me. I like that feeling when I know I need to perform in my role. You cannot make big mistakes, and they are instant. That's what I actually always love, and that's what got me into that area, that I right away can see if my decision was good or bad.
Yeah.
When I say we make a change on a race car and the car goes out and do another lap and the lap time is faster, and the race driver said, "Oh yeah, that feels better." That you have the instant feedback. That's
having that confidence in your knowledge and being able to just a quick smart decision just like that, and just being like, "Oh yeah, that was the right decision." And at the end of the day, it probably feels really good, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's obviously not just a gut feeling; it's science. Yeah, you need to look at the numbers, but obviously. Sometimes you need to make a call very fast, and it might not be. There's not, and obviously there is science behind most of the decision, but you have a lot of circumstances which it might be the right decision based on the science, but then it starts to rain, and then maybe that tire pressure wasn't the right one, or
all the factors,
or the other competitor. Did a different fuel strategy, and suddenly it's in front of you. It's there's a lot coming into play, which then only if everything goes right, then you win the race.
So just being able to adapt sort of to the situations that occur is obviously extremely important.
That's the thing. Like you need to have all your science, all your knowledge, like experience, science, and then reading the circumstances and put it all together.
Gosh.
So this might be a weird question, but what percent do you reckon of the race is won by the engineers themselves opposed to just the driver? Like you've got the driver and then you've got like the way the car's set up and everything like that.
It's hard to put a percentage because you both wouldn't work without each other, obviously. Because if the engineer makes the wrong decision and puts a wrong spring into the car, which doesn't work, then obviously the car, even a very good race driver, might not win the race. But obviously on the other hand, if the race driver isn't that talented or he has a bad day, have the best race car which should win, it might not win. So it's hard to put a percentage.
So it's sort of like a bit of both.
And even throughout the weekend, because you have practice session, you have qualifying and race. So it's always a development over the weekend, both with the engineer and the race driver. They give you feedback, what they feel, but then also you make decisions and leading them towards a better race car for that specific situation.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I also want to ask as well, because this is obviously called the Engineering Buzzcast.
Yeah.
I just want to ask as well, so what are some of the things buzzing in your line of work? Could be innovation, could be opportunities, new breakthroughs in technology just recently, or?
There's a lot of things happening in general in motorsport. Obviously, overseas, where in Europe or in the US as well, motorsport is just a bit bigger because there are more people there and more race teams. But they are definitely leading towards innovations like having electric motor on board, or there's even esports happening in motorsport, and our race drivers doing that as well. I'm pretty successful, to be honest. So,
what do you think of the whole esports scene nowadays?
It's interesting as well. I like all the new stuff. So I'm an engineer, so I like all. I'm not like want to go backwards. I just see where the world goes, and I think it was a very cool thing during COVID when we couldn't go actually race. So they just set up the E-Series, and that was happening for a while, but.
Did they consult you much on that? Like, were they like, "Oh, is this meant to happen?" or "This is how it would happen?" or like, did they ask you many questions about that? Or
well, it was more the category supercars itself. They set up the Supercar E-Series.
Right.
They just run it as a broadcast, and the race drivers, they would get a simulator sent at home, and they would just set it up at home, and then they had it like racing and a camera, and so the engineers were actually not involved. So I think we just might have told them, "Oh man, you shouldn't have driven like that," or something. We didn't do
He can just put his phone on mute.
He
or she can just put their phone on mute.
There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in Europe, and as well here in Australia with the supercars. We have next year a whole new car coming up, so will be a game changer as well.
The new Chevrolet coming out as well, switching from the Commodores.
So that's it's not only a different brand, what people would think, or the Holden-Sagon, it's correct. But for us, it is, that is the first car we really developed from zero. So nothing is taken over from the current race car to that one. And it will be very special. And we having it on the track already at the moment. So it's, seeing coming it all alive, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. You mentioned previously that Triple Eight has its first race for the season coming up soon, and we have a question from a listener, which is for every race, what are the changes, if any, that are mitigated by the engineers and teams? Like, what changes are made between each race to the car?
Yeah, actually, it's quite a lot. So I'll go back a step and explain how we usually plan ahead of the race, which is obviously each racetrack is very different. So there's some racetrack there, there's racetrack which have a very long straight, and there are racetrack which have very fast long corners. There are racetracks which are in a city, and they usually have 45 corners, like pretty stop and go kind of. So obviously the race cars need to be set up very different. For the racetracks with a very long straight, you want to have a car which is fast on the straight, which needs to be aerodynamic, very efficient. While then you have racetrack, which the straight tracks, they need to go fast around the corner, so they need to have more drive out of the corner and stuff like that, if that makes sense. So before the race weekend, we go ahead and look at race data from the previous year. So we looked from last year where we were. Were we good? Were we bad? Which corners were we good? Which corners were we bad? What were the settings? How did we progress throughout the weekend? How were our competitors? How was the other car in our team? And what kind of changes we made throughout the weekend? We use that data, analyze it, and that's how we start our race weekend. We say, okay, that all worked last year. If the weather conditions and the track conditions are similar, we use that as a base. But then even then, we start with that base and then evaluate over the weekend. So the race cars can be very different from racetrack to racetrack. For example, even usually at the end of the season, we have obviously Bathurst, this very famous race. So that's a very fast track, we would say. So it has the corners are not tight, they're just flowing, and there's a long straight down the mountain. But then the race after is usually Gold Coast, and that's like in the city, and it's just like 90 degrees corner, stop and go, and all that. So the race cars are totally different setup.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah, so there's obviously like a lot of redundancy built into those changes. Is that to making sure that redundancy is successful? Is that just mainly just based off of experience or engineering knowledge, or say you get there on the day and oh no, it's raining? Like what sort of things in your head do you go through that make you go, okay, I've got to change this and I've got to do this? Like what sort of things do you prep yourself up in the morning and go, okay, just in case this happens, or the night before, even the week before? Like how much preparation goes into that?
Yeah, so because most of the time throughout the season, our races are either in 2 or 3 week cycle. So the week after, when we come back from the racetrack, is usually post-event analysis. We go through the data, we see what worked well, and so on. The week before is then focusing on the next one, and we have the engineering meetings where we not only look at the stuff from last year or from last event, but also look at the weather, see what's going to be like. So we need to, if we go to Darwin, it's very unlikely it's raining, so we don't need to prepare anything for a wet session. But if we go to Sydney, where we've just been, and it was, you could see a Saturday might be dry, and then Sunday definitely will be wet. So you need to be ready for both. And we have software and simulation tools where we can simulate certain settings, certain outcomes, certain grip levels, certain tire pressure, and that gives us like a toolbox where we can work off then.
Right, okay. So can you use those esports simulators for that sort of thing? Like, can you be like, okay, let's put rain on this track?
I think so. They can do the guy. Well, it doesn't get as much feedback. More, it will help the race driver. Especially we have this year a race driver who is rookie, Brock Feeney. He, for example, has never been to the racetrack in Tasmania where we'll go next weekend.
Right.
So he will use the simulator just to get familiar with that track. In the simulator, you can simulate different curb level and some settings, obviously, on the race car as well.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
It's crazy how like much work and how advanced it is. Like most people would not realize how much like, you know, like tire pressure, for instance, like most people are just like, oh yeah, just make sure they've got enough air in them, you know?
Yeah.
But it's crazy how advanced that stuff is and how much analysis goes into it.
The work and also what kind of jobs are behind the scenes is crazy. For example, I always say, as an example, I think because people usually know there's some engineers making their car fast, but we have a sticker technician. So there's a guy who makes sure all the stickers on the car are correct and they're in the correct positions. And when there's a crash, obviously it's damaged, so he needs to re-sticker the thing in the night and stuff.
Yeah.
And to be a new sponsor logo, and he places them correctly. Or obviously it also depends which part of the car is on the TV a lot. Like, you know, there's some racetrack where they
really
just
think
have
of
a lot
everything.
of headshots, and then some racetracks it's always the right side because it's a left
That's
a corner
crazy.
with a lot of left corners. So there's a lot of stuff behind. No one ever actually knows who doesn't work in the industry.
So there you go. So if civil doesn't work out or electrical doesn't work out, you can always do sticker engineering.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's always something for everyone out there, isn't there?
That's so crazy.
Really. So also, Romy, recognizing you grew up in Germany, so the home of Mercedes and Porsche and BMW and all these big car companies, what was the background that you had growing up? Like, did that influence you at all? And if so, how did that foster your interest in engineering?
I'm not from a typical motorsport industry family, sorry. Because a lot of people working with me, they actually grown up on a racetrack kind of, so the dad or the brother or the cousin was always racing and they came along. So that was never the case. The only connection to motorsport was that Formula One is on most of the German TV Sunday afternoon because it's always on at 2 p.m. And especially when I was young, it was Michael Schumacher racing. So everyone just watched it like normal. Yeah. But it was just from very far. And then, as you mentioned, the area, especially the area where I grew up in south of Germany, that's where Audi, Porsche, BMW, and Mercedes, they're all within like a 200-kilometer radius, and it's all the headquarters, and obviously all the suppliers as well, Bosch, and everyone is there. Wow. So my dad itself, he's not directly in the automotive industry. He works with CNC machines. It's still kind of engineering, and they making part for the automotive industry. But so you grew up around all the nice cars, and dads or friends, they work in there. And I think still that kind of just being around there helps a little bit. But for me still, even when I was a teenager, and I knew I'm good in math and physics in school, I never felt like I really want to get in engineering. I always felt they're just men, it's big factories, it's dirty. Yeah. Like, I didn't see myself there at all. And only, when I did an internship, then I realized, and that was another opportunity I had, obviously, because there's so many companies there, it's easy to get a step into any of them, because obviously they need some engineers. Then I realized, I want to work in the automotive industry. And then as well, I actually started to study, I think it's called industrial engineering in English. It's more like a mixture of mechanical engineering as well as management.
Right, okay.
Oh, yeah.
And these, usually you would work in a position where the designers and either the management or the purchasing or controllers would come together, and you can kind of work in a position where you need to be across both or know how processes work, but then on the other hand have the technical knowledge. But then when I did an internship in one of these roles, I realized actually I want to do what engineers do, design the cars, make the thing, develop things. And then I switched to automotive engineering.
Right.
And I was lucky. We have in Germany, I think here they have it as well, I'm not sure. I mean, we have a study, it's called automotive engineering. Okay. It's the base is mechanical engineering. Right. But then, you dive in straight into automotive, like car body design, engine management.
Wow.
Electronics, and you choose your majors in that direction.
And that's a whole subject at university.
Yeah, so I choose car body design. So you have I think it was 3 years, you do all the basics, what every mechanical engineer,
Yeah.
I think, would do, and then you choose your major in which direction you want to go. And then you're kind of ready to go straight into work as an engineer for Porsche when you're done. And
Wow.
they pick the people there because they also influence, obviously, these themes and the direction, what these students should learn, because then they can pick the engineer straight away from there.
So did you intern before studying at uni and then like it? So that's when you started?
Yes, so in Germany it's similar. I think here you have like this orientation week where you do 1 week
Oh, yeah.
or so while you're still in high school.
Oh, cool.
And that's when I decided, give engineering. And my dad was like, come on, you're good in this, just go for it. And then I thought like, it's a good compromise doing this industrial engineering, because then I don't need to be with all the men. There's still like this management and another area where I can jump onto if I don't want to be with all the men all the time. But it came out, I actually want to go straight into the engineering side.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So did you actively pursue that internship? Like, did you just hear someone talk about it one day, or someone just mentioned it somewhere, or did they approach you with that sort of thing?
No, with that the first internship before my uni, I actively looked for that. And then during uni, the internship would make me change to the other subject, to the automotive engineering.
Right.
That's the one you could. No, even then you there are a lot of opportunities there, but you still need to apply for that.
Okay. Was that very competitive at all, or was it sort of just?
Yeah, it always is. Even though there are a lot of opportunities, the automotive industry in Germany is very competitive and obviously it's very traditional, not old school, because they're making cool technologies, but it still is a very male-dominated industry, and so you need to prove that you're good enough as well.
And Germany being that country known for their engineering as well, I assume that the internships and stuff over there would be very, very competitive to get into and very difficult to get into. But as long as you apply yourself and you do the right things, you can
and I said there were a lot of opportunities, but the cool ones, they are very competitive, and especially from the region where I'm from, there would people from the north come down for the just for the internship, move there for half a year, because that's the area where all the cool car companies are.
Very competitive.
So that thesis that you did through Mercedes as well, and in university, was that another thing you chased up, or what happened there?
Okay, let me take you a little bit back. So as I mentioned, I just took the major car body design, but in the end, I realized that's also not directly what I want to do, because for me, it was sitting in front of a computer designing a part of the car. And especially in the big car companies, you might actually never see that part. Well, you might see it, but you never see it, how it gets put on the car, because there's so many parts and you're just responsible for a couple of things on this huge car. So I'm like, well, actually, that's not what I want to do. I cannot just sit the whole day in front of the computer and design part. So I looked for other opportunities, and then moved into the area of engine calibration, engine management, which was that opportunity came up with Mercedes AMG. So I worked on the AMG engines.
Right, okay.
With my thesis,
Yeah. So what was your thesis about?
It was now my English. They developed an engine which just shuts off some of the cylinders when they're not needed.
Okay.
And I was responsible to make sure when they should be shut off, for how long that it's physically doable, because when they shut off, they get cold and they can be damaged when they ignite again. But then also, it should never feel for the driver, especially a person who drives an AMG, that he lacks of power when he needs it, and rather they just get shut off when he just cruises along. So I was responsible for putting it all together and making the logic behind all that. Right,
okay, yeah. Because the AMG engine is 8-cylinder as well. So when you saw the V8 supercars in Australia, were you like, oh, hey, I know that. I can work on that sort of thing?
Kind of. Well, AMG engines are known for being very powerful, and then motorsport is powerful as well, let's say.
Just like powerful engines.
Yeah.
So obviously you're in the performance analysis side of things. Was that So you did that with your thesis. Was that always something you wanted to do? Like in high school, were you sort of just like, oh, I like how things run and how things perform and analyzing the data of how that occurs? Or was that just more of something you developed through uni? Or
it came along the way. So I think the base was that I was good in math and physics. And I enjoyed math even especially looking back now. You're just putting numbers together and don't even know why you do that or what for.
Yeah.
And probably because I enjoy that. That's why it makes even more sense to put numbers together and make sense out of it and say the engine is too hard. Or creating, like I mentioned, we have a lot of math channels to analyze the behavior of the car, where you don't just look at how high the car is from the track, but also then put the tire pressure together with the temperature and all that. So and it definitely came along the way. It was never like, oh, that job there, I want to do this. I didn't even know that exists, that job. When I studied or when I was in high school, it was it was a path which came along through high school and uni. Like I mentioned, I first went for car body design, decided, just don't want to do design all the time, so want to be more hands-on. And then kind of from the hands-on came also, but I like numbers. So
yeah, it's sort of like all math though, isn't it? At the start in high school, you're like, I don't want to have to keep doing all these numbers all the time. And then as soon as you see the application for it, as soon as you see it actually doing something, you're like, oh wow, this is actually
and that's what I always say. It's the most enjoyable part of my job, that you right away get the result if your work is good or not, and even if you're not on the racetrack, I'm here in the workshop creating a new program for the car, loading it into cars, sitting in there playing with the dashs and the displays and see, that's right or not. That doesn't look like I wanted it to look, and then you just work on it again. So that's pretty cool that you always have feedback of your work.
For sure. Very important. It's always very rewarding.
On this, like recognizing your position in such a niche engineering field, what's one of your favorite projects you've worked on, or something that, like a really crazy opportunity that you've had that you can definitely pinpoint as something you've really helped develop your professional skills?
Probably two things to mention. Obviously, myself moving to Australia was a pretty big one. That opportunity came along after I worked already 5 years in motorsport in Germany for the same team, pretty much, where I started my professional career with Mercedes. And but after 5 years, I really wanted a change, just because I wanted to work in a different race series or with a different race car to expand my knowledge in motorsport. I wanted to move outside of Germany, and there was obviously some opportunities in England because the motorsport industry is pretty big there. But, England, Germany, same weather, rain. It's
conditions.
It actually, I remember it. It was in a summer day, but it was raining, 15 degrees Saturday. I'm like, I'm out of here.
Well, I guess the past few months hasn't been great here either.
But at least you can come in shorts and t-shirt every day. In Germany, wrap up everything. You get wet, you're cold. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And then I got the opportunity to come to Australia and work for Red Bull Holden. So at that time they were Red Bull Holden Racing. Now we are Red Bull Amper Racing.
So how much of your engineering knowledge did you have to change when you came to Australia? Was there much change there from what you learned in Germany to what you adapted to here?
Yeah, some of the job was similar, but the team I came from in Germany was much bigger. So I was, especially the last 2 years I worked there, I was responsible for all the tire engineering, tire data, tire analytics, tire development. And then here I just did everything which is on the car, which has a cable to it and produces a sensor or a signal. That was my responsibility, as well as making sure the radio frequencies are right, or I don't know, there was a lot. So it was expanded my knowledge a lot. It's pretty good.
Was there any changes in procedures, in terms of even just safety? I noticed that safety is a big importance in Germany. It also here is in Australia, but was there any change in that regard?
Well, there's a lot of procedures similar, all motorsport. So when you have especially when the race car is on a track, you have soft limits and hard limits on some of the stuff. So if, for example, the engine temperature is over a certain temperature, it's a hard limit, and they needs to stop the car or something like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of similar how you go about all that. So no, but then other procedures, because it's a smaller team, things are work different. It's easier to communicate throughout the whole company. Everyone knows each other better. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So touching back on your own personal story again, so recognizing that like not every engineer succeeds without your own failures, what sort of hoops have you had to jump through in your career that have been really prominent, or something that you've come across that you've failed in once that looking back you could mitigate now and change? Because you mentioned before that in Germany, obviously being like a male-dominated industry.
Yeah, I don't want to highlight it too much because that's obviously always but that's what it is. So when you are, well, that's what it was. And at my uni, I was the only woman there. That year, I just graduated myself then there. But yeah, there's obviously a lot of, there is a lot of perception, and especially the uni where I studied at, it's very old school, very traditional. It's very known for producing very good engineers in the automotive industry. But then also, all the professors are men. Yeah. And I always felt I cannot just be average. There were a lot of students who just were just average. They just cruised along. They loved their student life as well. But I always felt I need to perform. I need to show that I'm here and that I have a place here. I could not just be average. And actually, I never failed exam in my whole student life. Oh, wow. So I'm not just crazy, smart, or talented. I just worked hard for it.
Yeah, and also just being proud of what you're doing as well. I think is also a really important thing. Some people just go, I'll just get my uni degree and I guess I'll pass and I'll get through. But being proud and being proactive and just being like, I want to do well and I want to get good in what I'm doing.
But I just realized that's what I needed to do. Otherwise, as a woman there, you wouldn't have last. And even first job coming straight out of uni anyway as a woman in a race team. You need to prove yourself. You need to make sure you're good. You're better than probably a male would be, just that you earn your respect. But then once you earned your respect, you accept that, obviously. It's like a family, the motorsport company usually. So that's not going like that all the time, but I think first half of the year for sure you need to work hard and make sure you better than better than what I expect, let's say, just like that.
Yeah, because I think nowadays there's a lot of weight on some girls' shoulders to perform and outperform and outdo themselves, and I think like previously there's sort of labels slapped on them, if you know what I mean. Whereas nowadays it's definitely getting so much better, and like we just had our engineering orientation week, and I'd say 30 to 40% were women, girls, and it's really good to seeing that.
Yeah, it's very important to have a lot of women getting into the engineering and showing them what kind of engineering are out there. It's not just mechanical engineering, big factories and big machine, but there's so many cool areas in engineering which can get you in any direction you feel like. If you want to go straight into fluids and thermo, then do this, or you can do chemical, medical side. It's a wide range. You cannot just say engineering is not that female affected. So it's definitely, and it's good to see the change. But more important is also to help or to guide or give them a direction, these women, not just to jump in but also just go through and get a career all the way to the top, because obviously that's a big issue now. I mean, we have more and more women coming into engineering compared to 20 years, but there's still not many on the top. So I think especially now we need to work on giving them a good way to progress their career within engineering as well.
Yeah, okay.
On that, what's some advice that you would give to girls who are thinking of studying engineering, say they're in high school or something, or even women who are currently studying engineering? What is some advice you would give them to encourage them?
Yeah, like to reach out to people in general who work in the industry, in any kind of engineering they might be interested, and talk to them. Just see if that's really what they think, what a job is like, or just you need to get out there and see what people are doing, you know? Otherwise, you don't even know if that's something for you. Or like the same for me. Then I decided, actually, I didn't want to do that. I want to do that. I think this will help you a lot to push through your studies, but also never lose the goal out of sight. And like I said, there's some hurdles there, and if you're a woman or a man, probably both ways. So, but if you know that you have a direction where you want to go, so that helps you pulling through it. So I think if you can make some connections to people working in the industry, reaching out to them, asking if you can come for a couple of days just to see how everything works, or even do some work experience internship, that helps a lot. If that's not possible, then just talk to them, give them a call and say, I'm not sure if that's for me. Can you let me know what you're actually doing every day? Or, like...
I feel like nowadays it's completely different because we have social media and we have digital media platforms. You can just watch a YouTube video and go, oh, that looks pretty interesting. Or that looks cool. You can watch a video on race engineering and go, whoa, I want to do that now. Or like, whereas previously you would only hear about it from word of mouth or in the news or something like that. Like, especially like back in, say, the 60s and 70s, there's space engineering everywhere, but you wouldn't know about the other fields of engineering and that sort of thing. So
that's something I'm actually also working for this project. It's called, I used to call Dare to Be Different, now merged with Girls on Track, and it's a program where we do events on the racetrack for girls between 8 and 14 of age, and we just show them what throughout workshops, challenges, what kind of areas are in motorsport. It's like media, we have a fitness challenge, we have mechanical challenge, STEM challenge, and so on. And even that, if that would have been available when I was young, I probably would have known much earlier that actually this engineering stuff is pretty cool. But and as you said, that social media helps so much. And it's also easier to reach out to people. Just find them on LinkedIn, Instagram, and reach out, and that might help you get your guidance on where you want to go. Yeah,
and a lot more of those initiatives are now taking place, especially because people like yourself are getting into that field and recognizing and going, oh, I wish I had this when I was younger, or I wish I had this when I was in university. Same thing with this podcast. Oh, I wish I had this when I was in first year, or something like that. It's those initiatives that are going to get people further in that space, and that's what we need more of, I feel anyway.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah, definitely. So for any university students that are looking to get into the racing engineering field, or like just in the racing industry as a whole, what would you recommend to them? Like what sort of opportunities should they take? You said that before, maybe just ringing up a company and asking them what they're about, or asking for experience. What other sort of things would you recommend?
Well, you also need to just have a proper chat with yourself and make sure that's the direction you want to go. It is demanding, like time demanding, obviously. You're going to the racetrack, depends on where you work, but can be up to 20 weekends. And it's not just the weekends, it's like traveling. Usually we leave here on either Wednesday or Thursday, and you come back Sunday night or Monday. And a lot of times you're not getting the day off. Sometimes you get a Monday then off, but a lot of times straight back into the workshop, changing the car for the next race. Are you willing to give up a lot of your free time, family, friends, and stuff? That's something from the other side I would recommend, to just make not just it looks cool when you're an engineer, but it comes with a lot of compromises in your life. But if you're dedicated, that's fine, obviously. As you mentioned, again, especially experience on the racetrack helps so much. So if you are able to reach out to even a small race team, not obviously the supercar race team would be amazing. Red Bull.
Can I have a go on the weekend?
Red Bull Racing. But there are a lot of like hobby racers who take their car out. Maybe you know someone within your friends or in your family, and just ask them, can I come along on the weekend and have a look and help? And then this helps you already putting in your CV. And whenever then you would apply for an internship, then you say, I've been there, I have been for 4 race weekends, and I looked after the tires. And even if it's just you made sure that they're clean and ready to go, kind of. But at least that helps so much. And even in motorsports, when I started, I realized that a lot of the experience is worth so much. Like 2 years working in the motorsport industry, it's much more than another degree on top of a PhD or whatever. So whenever you get the opportunity to be on the racetrack and work even with a small team, if it's Formula Ford, if it's Super 2, if it's Toyota 86 development series, anything you can get at the beginning is very good, especially also because the motorsport industry in Australia is pretty small, so a lot of everyone knows everyone. So if you've been working with someone and they might help you to get the entry into another team who then might look for someone in engineering.
Even just washing cars on the weekend or something like that for the V8 cars or anything like that. Anything really. Hey.
No, it's just important. You see, and then you realize as well, again, is that something for me or not? Because,
So how can people find out more information about that? I guess like everything nowadays, you can just search on Google and look online. But like, are there any specific events that you hold for Red Bull Racing or anything like that that are introduced?
Well, what I just mentioned, we do that. It's specific for the girls. We have the Girls on Track. There is 2 coming up in Queensland only in June. They're here at our workshop in Brisbane, and then one at QR Raceway. But for example, I will be next weekend in Phillip Island. We have a race event there for the girls, and it's just you can go through the website of Motorsport Australia and just sign up. They have the whole calendar. It's probably around 12, 13 events in all states. That's obviously for girls, example, but I believe there's similar stuff out there for everyone.
So how do you stay focused? Because obviously it's a very, it can be quite stressful in some of the situations because you've got time constraints all the time, and you've got to, get things done by a certain time. So what would how do you stay focused and keep the ball rolling?
It is. Everything's time pressured. So, for example, this Friday, our truck with the race car and all the equipment would leave to go to the race in Tasmania because it takes a couple of days to travel there. So you work back from there. And then we have the day before we putting the cars on setup scales, and measuring all the parts and the bits which are on there, making sure everything is right. Then the day before, the engine will come back from our engine supplier who has inspected the engine. So it kind of, you work back from that one date, and then you have just like a to-do list, and everyone is on top of the other's job. So I will know what the mechanics are doing exactly on each day, and I know what I need to do that day because on Friday, Friday afternoon, 4:30, usually it's in the truck, everything is closed, and that's what I get. And being focused on the racetrack is actually pretty easy because you kind of live in this bubble. You're away from home, you're away from everything, and you work long hours. And it's like one after each other. You have practice, then you have another practice, then you have meeting, then
very
you have
scheduled.
So so it's sometimes I fully forget what I need to do the next week. Like you're really in this zone for these 3 days, and it's good as well because it keeps you focused on work. And then only like when I drive back or fly back, then it's like, oh yeah, I wanted to book my car in for inspection. I should have done that before. Just, like you think like, I'm going to call.
Yeah.
But then only then realize, I totally forgot about it the last 4 days. Yeah.
All the Red Bull starts to wear off. All the caffeine.
True.
Yeah. So just quickly as well, what are some important skills regarding leadership and communication that students need to start developing now? Or what have you found that works really well when working with a team of engineers with Hold?
Yeah, especially communication is very important in a race team. So everyone needs to be across what's happening on the race car. If it's especially on the track, when a car is on the racetrack, for example, coming into the garage and want to do a change. So every person needs to know what they need to do. If it's a tire guy, he needs to put more pressure in the car. The fuel guy needs to put fuel in the car. You need to know how much. So you need to communicate very well to everyone. Everyone needs to know what's happening. And this is not, on the racetrack it's obvious, but this goes throughout the whole thing, what's happening in the workshop. So that's a very important skill, and I want to make a point of it. It's also obviously important to keep the team together and see that the goal and what we're working towards too, because there are long nights, everyone is tired, maybe the race driver crashed the car, but there's another race the next day, so you need to put the car back together, and you kind of disheartened because
building that morale up.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to have a strong community. Keeping that team together, that's valuable as well.
Yeah. On that communication, what have been some of your favorite races that you've had to work with in the past? Like any that you've gone, I wish I could work with them again, or anyone like that?
So I worked 5 years with Jamie Whincup. And he now just retired as a race driver. He's now my boss. He's the managing director of Triple Eight Race and Sharing now. So I'm still working with him. But we aligned very well. We think the same, like logically, strategically. So I really always enjoyed working with him. And let me think back to whom I worked with in Germany. There's some which are... That makes it so special as well. You need to work with race drivers, which are usually race drivers are very particular. They have strong characters, they have big ambitions. They have a lot of pressure from their sponsors and obviously to perform as well. And especially back in Germany in that touring car championship I used to work, it could be, or it was usually a stepping stone into the Formula One. So you would have all these young race drivers, they all want to be a Formula One champion, and they want to show that they can do that. And they're like between 18 and 22, and they all think they will be the next Michael
The right
Schumacher.
age for that then.
So you need to read them and work with them on their level, and then they're all very different. So that's actually, I like that part as well, and I enjoyed always working with these younger drivers who are just developing their careers, to read them, to help them, guide them in which areas they need to improve as well, off the track, on the track. It's also an interesting area in the human science.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of psychology involved there as well.
It always is, and even now, and even with the race drivers who are super smart, been in the business for so long, if you make a change to the car, which is the science says this is faster, this is better, but the race driver doesn't agree or doesn't think so, that won't go faster. You need to we always say happy race drivers are fast race drivers.
On an end note, if you could solve one major engineering problem in the world right now, what do you think that would be, and how do you think you would be at?
Well, I thought about this question. Obviously, even though I'm not in that industry directly, or it's not my main job, I think still anything around climate change, sustainability, and moving to renewable energy, especially in Australia, would be something I would love to help, because would love to help get Australia on the same level where Europe is at the moment. They are big ahead, and we have everything here. It's like the perfect ground to make it happen. The sun shines all the time. You have, for example, big space where you can you have your house. You just put a solar panel on. You can power your car there for free. Not paying what's today $2.20 on the fuel station. I saw, that's one thing, and it's very important too. It's as we saw all the disasters happening the last couple of years with floods, bushfire, it's all coming from there.
Especially coming from Germany to Australia, would be a bit of an eye-opener, wouldn't it?
Oh my God. I did something which is illegal. I would film, when I see, even now, these trucks which just blow the black smoke out of it. I was filming this, and no one can believe this is Australia. They think it's maybe Congo, not saying it's worse there, but don't want to discriminate, but I didn't expect it's so bad here still with these cars. Most of the cars in Australia would not be allowed in the road in Germany. Maybe sometimes too strict already, but obviously they need to push for it there. It's a different environment.
What experience do you have with electric cars, and how much have you had a lot of experience with them in your industry?
Not in my industry. So there's a race series in Europe called Formula E. They're just electric cars. It's pretty popular there. A lot of Formula One drivers driving there, and it's it's very popular. It's on TV. It doesn't have a good uptake yet here because just there's no races in Australia at the moment. Not in motorsport industry. I have my little side hustle with my friends. We have a little startup called Will, which just aims to make electric cars accessible for everyone in Australia, because it's still, I feel like there's so much which could be done here. There's a big lack of knowledge, and just people just doesn't know where can I charge? Can I plug an electric car straight into the wall? What do I need for it?
And a lot of stigma surrounding them as well, especially in Australia, where people love traveling long distances. And everyone always asks that question in Australia: if you have an electric vehicle, how can you drive out west, or how can you drive from there to there? Because it's such a sparse country.
There's just and they here people think, oh, there's just Tesla and that's it. But there's so many electric cars
definitely
now.
growing.
So that's my knowledge I have on electric cars. So it's not where just started up in that industry and gain my experience there. But I think it's something very interesting. And like I said, Australia has the base for it, definitely, that we can go all electric one day.
Hopefully.
Step in the right direction. Yeah. So, Romy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
And if you're interested, just keep an eye out for any Red Bull events and stuff that might be coming up. You might even be able to meet Romy at some of those events, or who knows. So just keep an eye out as well for the Women on Track, Girls on Track.
Girls on Track.
Girls on Track as well.
Through the Motorsport Australia website, you can find out about it.
Awesome. No worries. Thanks so much for listening.
So much.
Thank you.
And with all that said, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to share this with your mates or colleagues who also might benefit from these discussions as well. And if you can, just leave an honest review or rating on your preferred podcast platform. So with all that said, you've been listening to the Engineering Buzzcast with your hosts, Jacob Primus and Daniel Hardy. And until next time, see you in the next episode.
See you in the next episode.
See ya.
The top job is that of the engineer. This requires a great amount of ability and training in mathematics, and you should have some courses.